A very good morning. Hello and welcome. You're watching Times Now with me, Akanksha Kajuria. Let's start the day with the top headlines at this hour. Well, let's start with the big breaking update that is coming in at this point in time. We're learning that US President Donald Trump has threatened to restart war with Iran once again, even as Vice President Vance met Iranian officials for the first talks under the interim peace deal that was overshadowed by Tehran's announcement that it has once again closed the Strait of Hormuz. And at this point in time, we're learning that Trump has once again threatened. He has said, and I quote, Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing troubles. If they do not, we'll hit Iran even harder, just like we did last week, only harder. And this is what Donald Trump has posted on social media, threatening to restart the war with Iran once again. And remember, this comes just 2 days after Iran also announced that they will be closing the Strait of Hormuz. And this has to do with the attacks that Israel has been launching on Lebanon. And Donald Trump has said that Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. If they do not, we will hit Iran very hard again, just like we did last week. Only harder is what he has mentioned on social media. The talks in the Qatari-owned Swiss mountaintop resort of Bergenstock were the first to be held under the terms of MOU reached between the two countries last week to end the war, extending a ceasefire from April to another at least 60 days. But at this point in time, we're learning that Trump has once again warned Iran, and in fact, we're learning that yesterday during the meeting between US and Iran walked out of that crucial meeting. And as far as the agreement is concerned, it called for reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Let me get you more perspective on this and go across to Irina Sukerman, a senior journalist and geopolitical expert based in USA. Thank you so much for connecting with us. How do you look at what has happened in the last few hours? Because everything was going fine. Both the sides were optimistic. In fact, Iran just 2 days back said that they will be closing the Strait of Hormuz to put pressure on US to convince Israel not to attack Lebanon. But at this point in time, we're learning that Trump has also warned Iran that he will be attacking the country once again if they do not stop their proxies in Lebanon. Your take on this?
Thank you so much. So what we are witnessing actually is a lot of theater. None of that should be surprising to anyone who's watched Iran's negotiations for a very long time. And also Trump's brinksmanship is an effort to reflect the same style and the same tactics as Iran. But Trump is in a tougher position from that perspective, because on the one hand, he faces the real crisis of security concerns for Israel. Hezbollah is refusing to disarm on its own. Iran is refusing to let Hezbollah disarm. And that's a real security threat to Israel, and Israel's security doctrine is to take any independent action to secure its own northern borders from attacks. And the fact that the deal does not cover Israel at all and does not cover its security provisions is a legitimate point of pressure that also affects Trump's discourse. He's trying to mitigate between his own threats and realizing that if Israel continues to attack Hezbollah, then the negotiations could be broken off at any moment. On the other hand, Iran is engaging in theatrics, knowing that it has the leverage to use in the form of the Strait of Hormuz, it has realized the U.S. has no intention of reopening by force, on the one hand, and on the other hand, they understand that Trump is afraid of losing face after all the drama, and he has invested a lot into making some sort of an arrangement, political arrangement with Tehran. So for them, there is less at stake in walking away from the table than for the United States, and they're willing to do that even over statements, even if those statements are not actually backed by any sort of force. This is their effort to gain an upper hand, to gain concessions, and to show themselves to be the tougher negotiations in this engagement. Unfortunately, the Trump team is completely falling for these tricks. None of that is new. This is exactly the sort of tactics Iran has employed over and over again since the Islamic Republic came into into being, and certainly in the past negotiations over JCPOA and other issues.
Absolutely, because other experts also believe that this is a way to put pressure on Iran to, come to the table and talk about the nuclear negotiations. Stay on with us. Let's get our viewers more about what happened in the last 24 hours, because talks between Iran and US were underway in Switzerland, reviving a diplomatic process that appeared uncertain just days ago. The road to lasting breakthrough remains far straightforward, even as the negotiators meet behind the closed doors. Tensions continue to simmer, and major differences remain unresolved at this point in time. We have another breaking update coming in from that crucial meeting that took place between US and Iran. We're learning that the latest round of US-Iran talks in Switzerland has reportedly ended ahead of the schedule, with Iranian sources claiming that Iran's delegation walked out following the recent threats made by US President Donald Trump. Despite the abrupt end, we're learning that the negotiators say progress were made on the sanction relief, with the draft agreement on the waiver for Iranian oil exports now finalized as well. Now, according to the Iranian state media, the sanction waiver are expected to be issued soon, signaling that the diplomatic channels remain open between the two countries despite the heightened stance that they have taken. Let me once again bring back Irina on this. Do you believe Israel is playing a spoiler when it comes to the negotiation between the two countries? Because the conversations are on, but the sticking point at this point in time, we're learning, is Lebanon, because ever since the deal has been announced and after that signed, we've seen multiple attacks by Israel on Lebanon. So do you think Israel and Israeli Prime Minister at this point in time, they're turning out to be a spoiler when it comes to the negotiation between US and Iran?
Well, it's not being a spoiler if they're legitimately concerned about their own security, and nothing in this deal covers it. I don't think they're obligated to save Trump's bilateral negotiations in which they're not included. There is no such obligation by any country. If they're not included in the process, they cannot spoil it if they're legitimately watching out for their own concerns. The spoiler in this case is Iran, which has tied the Lebanon issue to the framework with the US and has tied Israel's compliance to something that does not cover Israel's security interests. And Iran is trying to force Trump's hands and put pressure on Israel in this indirect way, precisely because Hezbollah is one of their most important regional assets. What that indicates to everyone is that Iran has absolutely no inclination to stop its proxy warfare across the region, and Israel is only one of possible countries that are suffering from Hezbollah's violence and intrusion. Lebanon itself, of course, has been struggling to try to get rid of Hezbollah's political and military influence, which is not easy because Hezbollah is embedded in the military, in the political strata, and ingrained all across the country. But of course, other countries have too felt Hezbollah's influence. Hezbollah has been active in training the Houthis in Yemen. Hezbollah has attacked Bahrain, and it has been active in cells with links all over the region, from Iraq to Syria. So we are seeing that it's becoming truly a global threat, and allowing Iran to get away with preserving and saving Hezbollah will do no favors to the international community, much less to the US. By the way, many Americans have been killed by Hezbollah in Beirut, and so what Iran is trying to do is not just about Israel, it's about forcing the US to accept that the murderers with American blood on their hands will continue to survive and thrive thanks to this deal.
All right, so you believe that this is a way by US to put pressure on Iran, because once again Donald Trump has warned Iran that he would be attacking the country and restart the war with Iran, is what we are learning at this point in time. Stay on with us. In fact, we have a statement coming in from US Vice President J.D. Vance, who has joined the Switzerland negotiation. During the first round of talks, he said that President Donald Trump wants to open a new chapter in the ties between the two countries. He said meaningful progress has been made in the recent hours, while acknowledging that all disputes cannot be resolved in a single day. In fact, on that, we have another breaking update coming in. We are learning that the latest round of US-Iran talks in Switzerland has reportedly ended ahead of the schedule, with Iranian sources claiming that Tehran's, as far as this negotiation is concerned, Iran's chief negotiators and the parliament speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf has strongly dismissed recent threats from US President Donald Trump, saying that Iran does not take American warning seriously. Ghalibaf also argued that if US pressure tactics had worked, US would not be in what he described as a state of desperation today. He also warned that Iran's armed forces are prepared to respond if necessary, adding that while the US continues to make threats, Iran will continue to act on the ground as well. So this is the latest we're learning as far as Iran's chief negotiator and parliament speaker is concerned, and he has hit back at Donald Trump and said that the warnings will not work with Iran. All right, so as US Vice President J.D. Vance, we've been told you, has joined the Switzerland negotiation. He is there along with his delegation during the first round of talks. He said that President Donald Trump wants to open a new chapter in the ties between the two countries. He also said that meaningful progress has been made in the recent hours, while also acknowledging that all disputes cannot be resolved in a single day. He added that US delegation remains encouraged and optimistic about the talks. Have a look at what he said.
What today really represents is the beginning of a technical negotiation that's not going to solve every disagreement, but is going to allow us to sit together as teams for the first time really in history to figure out what matters most to the respective parties, to settle those issues, to solve those issues, and get to a better tomorrow. The reason why the political leadership of the respective countries is here is because we wanted to, first of all, set up the structure for these technical negotiations, and second of all, make sure that our teams have our full support and know they can always call on us to break through any barriers. What the president has asked us to do is turn over a new leaf, to transform our relationship with the people of Iran and to extend an outstretched hand that says to the people of Iran that if your leadership is willing to give up being a driver of regional instability, if they are willing to give up nuclear weapons ambitions for the long term, then the United States is willing to fundamentally transform our relationship with that country. That is certainly our goal. We've already made great progress over just the last few hours, and I expect that we'll make additional progress in the hours to come. It is the president's leadership and the president's willingness to see a Middle East that is much different 10 years from now than it was 10 years ago. And what we're trying to accomplish here is something very simple. Through diplomacy, through working together to transform the Middle East, where Iran and the Gulf have been at war with each other, or at least have had very unfriendly relations, where Iran has been a driver of regional instability. Now we see a future where everybody can work together to promote peace and prosperity for everyone.
And with that, we have another breaking update coming in. As US and Iranian officials continue talks in Switzerland, we're learning that high-level political discussion are expected to wrap up on Monday, that is today. However, the technical teams are likely to stay on to continue the talks and iron out the final details. So as far as the core team is concerned, they will be heading back to their country, and the technical teams, they will remain in Switzerland and will continue the talks and iron out the fine details as well. All right, so this is the latest we're learning as far as the talks in Switzerland are concerned. Let me once again bring in Irina on this. Irina, it was supposed to be a day in which they would talk about the Strait of Hormuz, Lebanon, as well as the nuclear issue and related sanction as well. The first round, we're learning that there was initial statement that were made, and then came the tweet by US President Donald Trump in which he has warned Iran that he would restart the war once again. And since then, we're learning in the meeting there have been multiple highs and lows. How do you see this panning out in the coming days? Because we're learning that the talks will continue today as well, and the technical teams will then stay back and continue with the negotiation. How do you see it pan out in the coming days?
I think the pathway, the trajectory we're seeing is incredibly predictable. I think Iran is playing the US team for all they're worth and manipulating the optics, they're manipulating the messaging. J.D. Vance made an extremely cynical statement about the people of Iran, whereas in reality, the people of Iran continue to be butchered on a daily basis. There's absolutely no relief from them coming out of this arrangement, whatever may come from it. And it's also very obvious that Iran has absolutely no intention of abiding by the term of the agreements. At best, it's going to be a fig leaf that allows U.S. to withdraw its assets from the Middle East gracefully while making symbolic claims that can be enforced in equally symbolic measures from time to time. I do not believe that that ideologically this regime is capable of changing its trajectory. I think at best it's buying time and waiting out the Trump administration. At worst, it's proceeding as usual and using these talks to hide far more sinister intentions. And we could see it from the way this whole process has been handled from day one. When J.D. Vance came into the room, he was not greeted in the same way as the Pakistani and Qatari negotiators who were also present. He was essentially left ignored, and this put U.S. in a optically inferior position, and that matters a lot in the region. It communicates a strategic signal that U.S. is on the defensive. Walking out of the room after Trump's pressure also shows that Iran is simply willing to cast aside these discussions and that they matter less to them than to the United States. So they're experts at manipulating psychologically and exploiting the weaknesses of the American team.
So it remains to be seen how this pans out in the coming days. The negotiations will continue. The technical teams will remain in Switzerland to iron out the differences between US and Iran. Thank you so much, Irina, for connecting with us and putting that into perspective. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has also hardened his stand on the Strait of Hormuz, the key waterway, warning Iran against disrupting the key shipping through the waterway and signaling that US is prepared to act to keep the route open. Meanwhile, Iranian president has said that uranium enrichment is non-negotiable and insisted that Tehran will not bow down to pressure or threats on the nuclear program. So that is the latest we are learning as far as the negotiations between the two countries are concerned. We'll continue to get you more updates on this. With this, a very short break. More news and updates on the other side.